Hey there, Internet! My name is Jack Packard, establishing the who, what, and where here for the Escapist.
I'm Darren Mooney, and I'm also apparently establishing the when, whether, and where to for.
I'm KC Wosu. Why are you guys doing this all the time? Every time, you guys.
This week, we're going to be talking about the series finale. That's right, episode 9 of WandaVision. All the twists, all the turns, all the cake, and eating it too. That was Darren's joke, but I stole it. Ha ha! But then I gave him credit, so it's okay.
Any which way you can. Any which way you can.
Oh! See, I can steal all the jokes I want. He'll have 10 more.
You guys are on theme. There's a lot of stealing going on in this episode.
Sorry. I'm embarrassed. In case you can't tell, I'm turning scarlet. Huh?
Darren, you are a hydra of puns. Lop off one joke and 2 more take its place. Hello and welcome. This is A Marvelous Escape. All right. Here's what I would like to start with. I'd actually like to start with last week. I usually end up watching each episode twice, one here Friday morning, so we can talk about it Friday afternoon, and then I usually watch it over the weekend with my wife, as she is arguably a bigger comic book X-Men Marvel fan than I am. And I noticed something last week that will lead me into, I think, a lot of our discussion for this week's episode that I wanted to make clear, because I think I was a little hard on last week's episode. But last week, we had talked a lot about how there was a lot of wonderful character work. You know, thinking about Wanda and her family at a young age, thinking about Wanda and Vision, that wonderful scene in Wanda's bedroom, just two characters watching a TV show and having a character moment. And it kind of dawned on me that WandaVision is the best comic book adaptation we have had so far. That sequence was a witch and a robot having a real earnest conversation about their feelings and their place in the world. And I don't know about you guys, but I oftentimes forget that, like, Paul Bettany is in his Vision makeup. Like, I just see the character. And when you read comic books, that's what you get. You get weird characters having real conversations. And so I definitely want to take a moment and just kind of applaud WandaVision for giving us solid character moments between witches and robots and FBI agents.
I think there's also something that merits kind of acknowledging in that same sequence from the previous episode, because there's been a lot of attention put on the line, what is love but grief persevering? What's grief but love persevering? I hope that love isn't grief persevering, because that was much, much darker. But no, one of the aspects of that scene that hasn't really been kind of discussed, or we didn't really bring up last time, which I think we probably should, is the moment where they're watching Malcolm in the Middle, and Hal is putting together the extension, or kind of the roof on the kind of extension or veranda area at the back of the house, and it all falls down on top of him, and Wanda laughs out loud, and Vision asks, it's funny because the man got hurt, and Wanda corrects him and says he's not hurt, and he goes, how do you know that? And she responds with, it's not that kind of show. And I think, and you know, this is maybe Darren softening a little bit, he's not going to work the body yet, but Darren's acknowledging that, like, with WandaVision, to its credit, it is at least cognizant of what it can and can't do. There's a lot of things that maybe I expected of WandaVision, maybe I wanted of WandaVision, and I would argue that the first couple of episodes suggested WandaVision was capable of doing, that it was not necessarily capable of doing in the end, but maybe it wasn't that kind of show. I think that in the end it delivered what it wanted to do. It was a brand extension of kind of the MCU to television. It was exquisitely well produced. The performances were very lovely. It had lots of nice, it got me right in the feels in the right way. It was playful. It was occasionally funny. You know, I think that to give the show credit, I think it knew what it was throughout all of it, and I think it accomplished what it wanted to do relatively well. That's kind of, so, you know, that's my praise of kind of the WandaVision finale there.
Okay. I mean, I'll add to that. I 100% agree with Jack in the sense that these characters, like if you take like a step back and just stare at what's on the screen, it is extremely goofy. Like like Vision's look in the comics, he doesn't even look much better. Like I think he looks better like fully realized, but that's not saying much because he's just a weird looking character. But the fact that you can gloss over that and just get to the meat of like, you know, what he's feeling, what he's thinking, like what's going on in the moment, I think works really well. And I am glad that, you know, comic book adaptations have gotten this far, because like there's no way you'd be able to do this without, you know, the several decades worth of Marvel stuff existing beforehand, you know, like I don't think they could have gotten away with this, even if it is, you know, at the core still a really good story that they told. But I guess I will go ahead and segue us into some of the less good points about this finale, because I, for one, did find it very much disappointing in a lot of ways. The first of which, I'll admit, is a kind of a shallow one. I thought the action was pretty bad. Like, overall, I didn't get to see any actual, you know, face-offs between any of the characters that was visually interesting. Like, no, like, cool stunts, no, you know, hand-to-hand combat, or just, it felt like something you'd get on like a network TV show with a bigger budget rather than like a Marvel produced TV show. So I was kind of let down by that.
To be fair, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has seasons and seasons of great action. Like, there is some great combat in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so we can't even say it's as bad as network TV.
That's because you've got Ming-Na Wen, to be fair. Like, Ming-Na Wen doing that stuff is like more like Ming-Na Wen with $100 budget is much more compelling than CGI Paul Bettany with several $100,000 budget, I would argue. And I love CGI Paul Bettany. And I do appreciate that Paul Bettany came out and he said, yes, the Luke Skywalker level cameo we were talking about, the actor who I'd really wanted to work with throughout my career and I never had the opportunity to do so, it me. And I'm like,
it was
Bettany,
me.
Bettany, I love you. I love you so much.
That was good. He got us.
That's a check in the Darren was correct box, by the way. Excellent call. Very funny, but and I agree. And you know, part of their power set in particular is wibbly wobbly. Like, you know, a witch or a wizard. That's how they're gonna fight. They're gonna just stand there and go like this. So yes, it was a little disappointing.
Doctor Strange did it best. Like, because I've always hated like action in Harry Potter because it's like wizards pointing sticks at each other. Like it's corny. I've hated that. And like Doctor Strange made like combat magic look really cool.
Yeah.
And like they completely went in the opposite direction for WandaVision. Like, oh, she's a witch, so they go It's not interesting to watch.
I can be with you there. I can 100% be with you there. Similarly, if we're sticking with kind of action as a negative, we get like not only do we get the sword military guy is bad, is illogically bad, we get he is now apparently dumb, deaf, and blind. Because, you know, the sword military guy breaks into the Hex. He's got all of his troops. Suddenly, all of his troops are frozen still and missing their guns, and he decides that his best course of action is to unload the magazine on some children.
Jack.
Darren.
If he didn't do that, much like if Agnes didn't kill Sparky, how would we know that Agnes and Tyler are the real baddies of this story? If they didn't kill a dog and try to kill some kids, we might have some crazy idea like, I don't know, the woman who enslaved an entire town is possibly the villain of this piece. But I'm really glad that the show went there and said, no, Tyler definitely, absolutely the bad guy. He tried to kill a bunch of kids. Can't beat it that way. And Darcy gets a single line. Darcy gets one line, which I kind of adore.
I want to come back to Darcy because that was kind of a running theme with this episode. But like, yeah, freaking Hayward shot at children. But also, he's tried shooting at Wanda before. Like, he's done this already and it didn't work. So I don't know what his plan was. They sent in White Vision to be their ace in the hole, right? And while he was tied up with Wanda's vision, and while Wanda was in the middle of a fight with another witch, What the like? Why did Hayward even bother to join into the engagement? Like, you could have done the King Kong thing and just said let them fight. You know, like, it just didn't make any sense.
What was the strategy there? Right, and like, did he not see the very obviously evil-looking witch floating in the sky
Yeah, they
when he pulled
completely
up?
ignored her. No one said a single word about Agatha and what she was up to. Like, no one had any questions about that.
She's a hostage. She's a hostage. Don't shoot her. Don't shoot her.
Just make sure you shoot Wanda. That's all that matters. Shoot her, shoot her kids, whatever's next to her.
Right.
Like, I'm like, the big takeaway from like Hayward's characterization here is that he was apparently smart enough several episodes ago to doctor the footage of Wanda. Now that seems like it's beyond him. I do not believe the villain who appeared in this episode is smart enough to order doctored footage. Anyway,
Yeah.
And I think like the level of his involvement and intelligence kind of just rapidly decaying, I think is part of a larger thing because it happened to several other characters. Like Monica Rambeau's role and like what was she doing the rest of this episode? Pretty much nothing. What happened with well, Jimmy Woo had like a little time to shine, but Darcy specifically did one thing, had a single line, and they didn't even let her show up at the end to congratulate with the rest. Like they gave Monica a throwaway line saying like, "Oh, she said I don't care about paperwork or something," and just wasn't there because there was something apparently more important than seeing if your two friends in this crazy situation were okay, right? Like she left that car and walked away apparently.
To be fair, Darcy did get like the entire episode before to just Darcy and Vision together. She had a lot of screen time, so that's just sharing. But poor Monica Rambeau, like this is also a bit of her origin story. Doesn't matter. Guess what? She has powers now. Doesn't matter.
Well, again, like I think that's the problem with the Monica Rambeau story. The Monica Rambeau and the Tyler Hayward story are the elements that exist to further later Marvel properties more obliquely, and that like you can tell that this is leading for Wanda into Multiverse of Madness. And I love little touches like the screen behind her showing Oz the Great and Powerful, which is another Sam Raimi film, much like Multiverse of Madness will be. I love the like shout out where Agatha gets crushed by the car, and you get the little shoes pointing out like the Wizard of Oz again. Yeah, and again,
Very
I love
fun.
little touches like the hex. When the hex is closing in, you get an Evil Dead kind of camera shot pressing in as well. It's very Evil Dead. So, and like little elements of that are kind of like, obviously her plot is going in that direction, but like with the character of Rambeau, it's always felt like she was a Captain Marvel 2 character, and she was put in here not because it was necessary for her to be in here, because this story already has enough characters. She was in here because we need to do some brand awareness and promotion because we're doing Captain Marvel 2, and presumably we're doing Secret Invasion if we're talking about the Skrulls and we're talking about S.W.O.R.D. That's the part that always felt kind of like corny to me, and I will take a little tick mark. Darren was correct, tick mark, when I say like her primary function was to defeat Hayward. Like that was the big moment, was her standing up to Hayward, blocking the bullets from Hayward. That's Monica's character arc. It's like, I took back S.W.O.R.D. from the evil dumb man who's running it now. I've like put my mother's soul at ease. I've restored her organization possibly. But yeah, it's an element that doesn't really work outside of, well, here's something that's going to pay off in 5 years. Speaking of White Vision.
Okay, I'm gonna like swing this back over to the positive for a second here.
Sorry.
In White Vision, absolutely. White Vision is part of the positivity, which I'm with Casey 100% that the fights in general were not exciting. The reason why I like comic book movies is because I'm a fan of sci-fi and I'm a fan of action, and you put those two together, you usually get a comic book movie. Ooh, the action, not so great. But what we do get here for both of our big fights, for our Wanda fight and our Vision on Vision fight, is clever solutions to the problem. That reminded me very much of Doctor Strange, the way in which Doctor Strange ends. It's a clever way to end a big fight, and both Wanda and Vision had clever ways. It was Vision, like, they are equally matched. They cannot defeat each other. So Wanda's Vision uses a charisma check and is like, whoa, wait a minute. What if we talk this out? That's neat. That's
but
fun.
also even like a Star Trek the original series maneuver where it's like let's give the android a logic puzzle to contemplate. That'll slow him down before he crushes my skin. Which I kind of adore. And the ship of Thesis and stuff like that. And it's a very good dilemma. And I kind of like, my only real problem with this is that I wish that dilemma, which is a very clever one, the idea of like, if you take a ship and if you replace every plank on the ship, is it the same ship? And then if you assemble the plank somewhere else, is that also the same ship? And I like, you know, the idea of using that as a metaphor for change and growth, because this is what the story should be about. It should be about Wanda processing her grief, coming out the other end as a changed person. And, you know, I wish that connection had been a little bit stronger. That, like Vision's understanding of that theory, that was kind of like an actual character beat rather than something that felt just a little bit tacked on to me. But I did really like that sequence, and I did love the defeat the robot using a logic puzzle. Again, very 60s, very classic sci-fi.
The only winning move is not to play. Hoo-hoo.
But it does, and this is a thing they kept doing. Like, it resolved that situation. Like, Hayward and crew built an evil Vision, and within the first third of the episode, they kind of resolved that situation, and White Vision left. They never did anything else to tell you, like, maybe where he was going, what he was planning. And the thing is, this is presumably a Vision who has regained all of his memories prior to, Infinity War.
Well, they specifically said these aren't your memories, but you have the data.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, theoretically, like, White Vision and Wanda's Vision are both brand new entities, as they said in the metaphor. So White Vision theoretically is gone off to have his own journey of self-discovery. But to your point, Casey, he just noped right out of the episode.
Like, just...
And I love
no other character after that point even mentions him. Like, Hayward wasn't even like, where's our Vision? Shouldn't he be doing something right now? Like,
but not even like Wanda when like her Vision flies out. She's like, what happened? She's not even like, what happened to that other Vision? It's like, no, don't worry, it's grand.
Right?
But
right?
A very similar situation to Fake Tro. Right, Monica is trapped in a room with who we now discover is the Ralph who Agnes has been referring to.
Use his full name, please, Casey.
What was his full name?
Ralph Boner.
Ralph Boner, an actor.
Yeah, not quite Evan Peters. I was a little disappointed that it wasn't Evan Peters.
You wanted his real name in the show to be Evan Peters?
Like, he was Evan Peters, the actor, who just lived in that town, but still an actor, which is a fun troll face, by the way. Like, we definitely trolled you with Evan Peters.
It throws so much cold water on, like, the idea that this show was meant to do something else. Like, it was an absolute troll. Like, what this show was meant to do was tell a story about Wanda and Vision.
Yeah.
Period, point blank. Because the Monica stuff doesn't matter. The sword stuff doesn't matter. It was Wanda and Vision. The entire plot, after seeing this episode, could have been started and resolved without anyone else's intervention.
Yeah.
Like, because Agatha shows up because of Wanda's actions. They go on for a while. Then, she steals her kids. Like, all of this had nothing to do with anything that Hayward or Monica, inflicted on the dome. They were watching. They were trying to do something about it. But everything they tried failed. Like, they were like ants trying to get involved in a fight between two adults.
Right.
So,
which, I suppose, like, you do need a little bit of that to understand, like, the gravity of their powers, which is important. But I absolutely agree with you. Like, this could have been a 4-episode miniseries. It could have been a movie length, is basically it. And then they padded it out to, well, you hate to say padded, but they added all this extra stuff for grander universe building. Some of it worked, some of it didn't.
I mean, I really do feel like this is maybe the sloppiest example of their extended universe content. Because I can't think of any other Marvel movie that they've done. Because many of them do link directly to other properties. Like, they'll maybe introduce a character, or like just the next stage will have a previous character involved in that one. So, like, they'll link them that way. But this really felt like, we have this show to do. Oh, wait, what do we need to sign off on next? Oh, we'll throw Monica Rambeau in there. Let's throw Darcy in there. Like, that's what it felt like. Like, and they really kind of failed to tie any of it together cohesively at the end. Like, they really just went like, all right, well, Monica's gonna do this thing now. Vision fucked right off over this way. Evan Peters doesn't matter.
To be fair, though, I mean, it's not as if White Vision went off to go to a cave and have some magic visions about an upcoming Infinity War movie, about Thanos and how serious that is, to be fair. I mean, it's not quite as clumsy as, say, Age of Ultron was in doing kind of like the brand mandated kind of setup and payoff, I think.
Sure.
I will say that I did actually like the boner joke. As somebody who's been like, is it the X-Men? Are they coming over? Are they just trolling us? I actually really liked that was one part of the episode that genuinely seemed like it was designed to not deliberately piss off fans, but to be indifferent to how fans would feel about it. Because I think Jack joked at the start of this episode, like, there's so much cake, you could both have it and eat it. The great thing when we were talking about it, like, before we went on air, most of our predictions were both right and wrong simultaneously because they were trying to do absolutely everything. So, of course, Wanda and Vision end up having a tearful goodbye, and she ends up saying goodbye because she's accepting that he's gone. But also, of course, White Vision suddenly ends up with the memories of actual Vision so that he can possibly go off and become Wanda's Vision at some point in the future, because you don't have to make a choice between those two things, because doing that might alienate fans. You can have both. You can have everything that you ever wanted. And again,
absolutely. The children are sacrificed to save the townsfolk.
Like you said. Yeah.
But in the post credit sequence, we hear the children's voices again. She's going to get them. Oh, you get both. Oh, you get the sacrifice, but they're still around. Nothing matters.
Which is exactly what you said. Like we said, like we had both of them. We argued about which of those two things was going to happen. Would she have to give up her kids in order to like save the world, or would she have to venture across the multiverse to reunite with the family in an alternate world? And the show says both. I mean, it feels like at a certain point, it's like just make a decision, choose one, decide what your story's about. Like one of the things that people have generally argued WandaVision's about, and one of the things that I think that at its core it was really good when it was focusing on, was this idea of grief and loss, and the idea of like processing loss and coming to terms with loss and moving through the stages of kind of grieving and loss. The problem is when you get to the end of that here, and they have the conversation, and she's like, Vision's like, we said goodbye before, so it only stands to reason, and then she says, we'll say hello again. It's like, does that mean that Wanda's journey through grief towards acceptance and understanding means absolutely nothing? Because she's going to be reunited with either White Vision or an alternate version of Vision at some point in the future. So everything that we've watched her go through, process, come to terms with, means absolutely nothing. That's my big kind of worry coming out of the season finale. Sorry, I sound like I'm being complaining or grumpy. I apologize.
No.
No, you're hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Like those lines specifically tell, and we keep coming back to this, they tell Wanda that she can do whatever she wants. Like she's free from blame. And like Wanda, and the thing is, they toyed with Wanda facing the consequences of her action. Like, remember the nightmare prediction I came up with where the townspeople thanked her for keeping her in the loop? Rather than do that, Agatha frees them, they surround her, and they try to talk to her, like, because clearly they all knew her as an Avenger. Like, they liked her. They were surprised by what she was doing, right? Mm-hmm. So they were trying to explain it to her like you would a child. Like, look, can I at least go talk to my daughter? Like, is that fine?
Yes.
So, like, it wasn't like pure horror, like, oh my God, Wanda's so evil. It was like, Wanda, can you please get this under control? Like, we're really struggling here. So it was kind of like they didn't go full, forgive you, but it still wasn't enough to really push her into the you did a bad thing, Wanda.
But This is exactly when Casey made that prediction last week, the scene that, like, he got it right. We all got it right again, because it's like, oh, the townspeople hate and fear her, but the way in which it's framed consistently, and this is really annoying, is like you have the scene where Agatha shows up and she's like, heroes don't torture people, Wanda. And I'm like, why is Agatha the villain in the story because she says that? What is it that makes... Like, Agatha killed a dog, Wanda enslaved a town. Which of those is the greater evil? I do not know. But, like, consistently throughout, you have, like, Wanda... You have the sequence where Wanda is convinced to, like, lift the thing and let all the townspeople out, even though clearly they've got no way of running to the edge before all the sword people come in. So clearly, like, the episode presents it as, like, Agatha doesn't have a moral point. She's just manipulating Wanda to get the swords people in so she can trick her even further. So there's no actual moral argument here. The problem that I have with it is that, like, you get to the end and you have this sequence where Wanda's walking through town and everybody's looking at her and they're all judging her. And that sequence is shot from Wanda's perspective. It's intense close-up on Wanda in her hoodie, looking vulnerable, looking tired, looking scared. And the townsfolk are presented in these wide shots, just staring at the camera, and it's meant to make us as an audience go, man, this is really uncomfortable. We're meant to feel kind of like, if you think of Game of Thrones, that famous shame sequence, where the townspeople are chanting shame as Cersei kind of walks through and has crap thrown in her. And again, this is the sequence that Casey predicted. It's the bit at the end of that. The final word on what happened at Westview isn't given to anybody who lives in Westview. It isn't given to any of the parents who are separated from their children. It isn't given to anybody who, like, has nightmares, has had Wanda's nightmares pumped into their head for a week. It's given to Monica Rambeau. And Monica Rambeau actually says the line, and I'm quoting, "These people will never know what you sacrifice for them." And it's like, okay, hold on. Let's just back up and unpack what you're saying there. When Scarlet Witch arrived in Westview, she did not have anything. She did not have vision. She did not have kids. She had a car. And sure, yes, she threw the car through a window earlier in the episode. That's maybe a sacrifice, although I suspect it was a rental, but anyway. But then she created vision.
But wait, that car was still in her driveway when she undid the house.
Oh, okay, so fine. She didn't actually sacrifice it.
So
I
she
think
didn't
that was a different
sacrifice
car.
somebody else's car.
Yeah, she sacrificed somebody else's car. It's fine. But like, she created the kids out of nothing. She created vision out of nothing. She created all this stuff from her own imagination. She did not sacrifice anything. And if anything, she sacrificed the town for her nostalgic fantasy. Like, Monica's line should be, "These people will never know what you sacrificed them for."
Ooh.
Like, that's the thing that really bugs me about that sequence.
I agree with you, but I have a slight counterpoint here, which is something we've talked about a little bit, which is this idea of not understanding your powers. That's a very X-Men mutant thing, right? And this is also the show having its cake and eating it too, which is Wanda did this all by accident. She doesn't know, she had no control over her powers, and eventually, when finally confronted with all of the bad it's doing, she can no longer turn a blind eye to it. She makes the face turn and goes full good guy. I like that. I like that. That's a very X-Men thing. That's a very, like, I'm learning to understand my powers. I see all the harm I've done. I'm ready to be just a good guy.
But then she fecks right off. She doesn't stay around to like it feels like, we look at Westview, and Westview is falling apart. Like, there's leaves in the swimming pool. Everything is all boarded up. The cinema's closed. Like, Wanda doesn't stay around and say, "Look, I know you people hate me and have very good reason to, but, what do you want me to do? I can fix up this town any way you want it to be. I will apologize. I will do community service. I will atone. I will do something at some point." But literally, as soon as the FBI cars come into town, one is like, "Fuck it, I'm out of here." It's like, no, it's like the feds are coming. It's like,
Right,
You're
yeah,
absolutely right.
It looked for a second like she was going to be like, "All right, I get it. I did something wrong. Let me go and answer for my crimes."
Like, she
Rather
didn't
than
even
do
give
that,
them a
she's like,
speech.
Bye.
like
she didn't-
turn around and be like, "Hey, everyone, I've learned a lesson from this."
Like, she didn't say a single word to Dottie, not to Deborah Jo Rupp, whose husband, probably died from the food that was caught in his stuff. Like, because we only see Deborah, we don't see who her husband was.
yeah.
Like,
Fred Mahmood did not pop up. Yeah, he's not popped up since. Like to imagine, as soon as he left the household, he just keeled over.
we still don't know what happened to the beekeeper. That was left on the cutting room floor.
Oh, right.
So,
That's right. No, there were a few mysteries left on the cutting room floor. But I think this is the important point, which is like the stakes were never as big as we wanted them to be. And for longtime comic book readers, they never, ever will be. Is the unfortunate part, is we want movies and TV shows to act different than comic books. We want our characters to grow, and we got a little bit of growth, but it won't mean anything in the end. She's not necessarily sorry because she didn't do anything to repair any of the bad that she did. She, in fact, got a boon from this because she's more powerful and now she's more educated about her power. Good.
She got
good
a name
for you.
out of it, and she got a cool costume. And that costume was really cool. That's a big plus for this episode.
And I mean, she got to do like the Bruce Banner retirement thing where she goes and lives in a cottage in the middle of nowhere to master her powers. I don't know if she's going to turn into Mark Ruffalo at some point. I don't know if
a
that's
very Thanos retirement, by the way. Just like a cottage in the middle of the nowhere with water boiling. It's a very
Ed Norton
Thanos thing.
Ed Norton did it first.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Also, hey, I want to, speaking specifically of her in her cottage shot, the second credit sequence, can Marvel not afford a better drone? Did you see how shaky that shot was going in? Stabilize your shit, Marvel.
Magic, Jack. Magic. Whenever something like that happens, it's magic. A wizard did it. A witch did it.
It was like, drones are relatively inexpensive and you can get really high quality drones for really cheap, but the cheaper they are, usually the lighter they are. So when you're going over a body of water, it's windy and that drone shot was shaky as shit. That just bothered me
I don't
from
think
a
I picked up on
technical
that.
point.
I mean, look,
just
two Paul Bettany's. That's that Paul Bettany guest appearance at the end. We don't know what that cost was to get a Paul Bettany guest slot. That's what I'm saying.
True.
Yeah.
That's
Did they
true.
have to pay him twice, you think?
Maybe.
We'll replace you with
Maybe.
Jude Law,
Midway through the episode, I paused the episode to write a note. It was at like the 31-minute mark where I came up with the defining theory. And unfortunately, I didn't say it last week, so it didn't count. But I wrote it down, and I wrote down the time code. Be like, oh, if I called this, I'm just going to say I called this. Because I came up with the best idea for who Jimmy Woo's witness was. I came up with the best idea, which is like the back of an old man's head, and maybe we hear some audio that was Stan Lee. Obviously, Stan Lee is passed now, but just the back of his head, and like you hear like a very Stan Lee voice saying, "Oh man, what a week I've had," right? And I was like, oh, that'd be like a clever way to get a Stan Lee cameo because we don't have a Stan Lee cameo in this.
Yeah.
But of course, also the other thing is there's no resolution to why Jimmy Woo was there in the first place.
Right. Yeah. So that was my prediction, was that it was just a reason to have that character around. Yeah. It didn't actually matter. And that's part of why we kind of went so far down a rabbit hole, because we paid attention to what the characters said, which I don't know if we should be punished for that. Like for wanting the show to follow through with the stuff the show says it's doing. Like, I don't know if we're that overzealous to be like, well, it doesn't make sense that Jimmy Woo never gave a shit about his informant after all the Wanda stuff happened. Like, that person presumably was one of the people trapped. Jimmy Woo doesn't care. He was ordering everyone around after the end of that situation. Not one person was he saying, go find my informant. That's all you need was a throwaway line there. Then we can know that the informant didn't matter. Like, he wasn't significant. He was just a person. Jimmy Woo doesn't even care that much.
Yeah.
Just a reaction shot would do it. Just have Jimmy Woo wink at somebody and in post put in a picture of somebody. Put in like some stock footage you have of like, Emmett Caulfield or whoever.
Ooh, there you are. You're my witness. I'm glad to know you're okay. Now back to work. Well, and it's like very, very similarly to the finale of Lost, which is another mystery show that set up a lot of mystery bullet points. At the end of the day, I actually liked this episode. I thought it was very well done because of the characters. I liked all of the character moments. That being said, it's a mystery show. The show very specifically sets up things and then explains them in later episodes. We are rewarded for guessing. We get things like Ralph Boner as little like, oh, you were trying to figure this out. Here's the solution to that. Bye.
Yeah.
And
look forward to seeing
not
Andrew Garfield as David Cockguzzler in Spider-Man 3.
Right. Right. But because it gives us answers to things like this, we should expect answers. And so, like, who the witness in witness protection is should have been answered. Even if it was a nobody, it should have been something. But at the end of the day, it's the characters that matter, and I liked it. I liked those moments. It was emotional and wonderful.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like my big issue with WandaVision is the fact that, and again, I loved the first, I think, 5 episodes a lot more than you two did, to be absolutely honest, because Darren was like, I'm on the gravy train right here. As soon as the plot kicks in, I am out of here. And past Darren, you are on the money. But no, but I mean, like, that's the thing that, it's a common thing with Marvel movies, and with Marvel products and projects in general, is that, like, generally speaking, I can appreciate them for what they are. I like them when, I like them when they surpass expectations. So like Iron Man 3, for example, or Thor Ragnarok are like fantastic films. They're incredibly clever. They're incredibly ambitious. They're doing very clever things with the format of superhero cinema. A lot of Marvel movies, like say Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp, know what they are and they're perfectly happy to be those things. They're fun. They're enjoyable. They're not necessarily taxing. They aren't high art, but they're fun and you kind of go with them. Yeah. And I like those too. The Marvel projects that typically frustrate me, that kind of, and make me feel a little bit, I don't want to say angry, but a little bit kind of like just pent up and mad inside. Those are the ones that seem to be gesturing towards big ideas, but pull back at the last couple of minutes or pull back at the last hurdle. And I think of, say, like Civil War or The Winter Soldier as examples of this, where like The Winter Soldier is like, hey, let's talk about like their surveillance state. Let's talk about drone warfare. Let's talk about the military industrial complex. But it's like, oh wait, but we're also like wired into the Department of Defense, so we can't really go there. And also, we want to sell toys in Germany, so we can't make the Nazis actual Nazis. But don't worry, we'll fix it in post. We'll connect it all together. It'll be fine. It'll look like it's saying something clever about the world, but it won't actually say anything clever about the world, and job's done. Or Civil War, which is like, by the way, these characters that you root for are really terrible and horrible and kill lots and lots of people when they do the stuff that they do. We should probably not draw attention to that, because if we draw attention to that, we're going to have to deal with it. Oops, we drew attention to it, but it's okay because everybody's besties at the end. And it's like, no, don't draw attention to it. And I think my problem with WandaVision is that the first 5 episodes of this are so good. They're so atmospheric. They're so rich. They're so clever. There's so much going on there. And, they're hinting at things. They're getting at kind of ideas that are big and clever about trauma, about guilt, about, like, the ubiquity of American pop culture worldwide, about this idea of responsibility, about the way in which we see the world and how much of that is mediated through the act of television, and the idea of, like, Marvel coming to television and meeting television on its own terms, so that when all that stuff just evaporates in those like reality bending blocks, like from the cover of House of M, which I did like as a kind of a nice Spanish touch. Part of me is just like, well, I feel like I was ripped off. I feel like you tricked me into thinking this was going to be something more than it was. It's an even more kind of prestige-y, nonsensy version of what Jack was talking about, because Jack actually had a legitimate complaint about being like, well, you promised me a mystery. Where's my mystery? Darren's like, you promised me big ideas. Where are my big ideas?
That's just as valid. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, I will say, though, because I want to end on a positive note, I did quite like the payoff of Wanda using the runes at the end. I thought that was a very clever structural touch. And if you're watching on Disney, I did like that the previously on, true to the television tradition that the show is steeped in, ruined that reveal perfectly by making a point to show you both the ruins themselves in the previously on, and also have Agatha explain how they work, the entire line of dialogue, so that you're like, man, I wonder if this bit in the previously on is going to come into play later on in this episode. And it did. It's like, well played, WandaVision. You understand the language of television.
Yeah, like when you're watching a show and they say previously on and they show you a character who you haven't seen in 2 seasons, you go, oh, I wonder who's showing up today.
Right. Yeah. But like, I agree with everything you're saying, Darren, but I do like, and you shared a Vox article earlier in the week that touched on a lot of this stuff, like that debate between like kind of binge TV and week by week watching of the TV. Yeah. And I do still feel like, you saying that you like those first 5 episodes, I do think it's because as a block of 5 episodes, they work. Individually, I still don't see
that's fair.
Those episodes kind of giving a satisfying story based on what we know that story was supposed to be. And like, I stand by that. Like,
I'm not.
Yeah, and if WandaVision had taken that premise and then just rounded off all of the plot threads based on that premise, it would have been perfectly fine. It would have been brilliant. Like, as excited as we were at the start of that show, I don't think it was that crazy to believe that it could go where we maybe wanted it to go, especially since all this stuff was drilled into us by the showrunners themselves. Like, everything that we came up with in terms of a theory was because the showrunners knew we would come up with them as theories. But they chose to instead use that information, to use those clues to lead you in a different direction to the story that they wanted to tell, which was the story that we all knew would have been the most boring version of this story. So like, I just find it weird that was the choice they made, because they knew how to make this interesting and chose to fake us out with that to then tell us a story that's less interesting. Like, that's what's so weird to me.
What I think is kind of interesting there that you're kind of getting at is, and again, this is something that Disney do really well. And again, there's been a lot of discussion around like WandaVision and the idea of, is an MCU backlash coming at some point? Because, you know, obviously we've reached the end of Endgame and things can't continue on forever. And I guess there probably will at some point. I don't think it's going to materialize anytime in the near future, to be absolutely clear. But one of the things that I do find interesting is, before the premiere of the final episode, you had the director coming out and saying people are going to be disappointed with this, which is, again, something that, and it's not just WandaVision that's had this. I think Game of Thrones obviously had this, but I think that, you know, shows like, say, True Detective have had the creators come out and say, look, people are getting a bit carried away. We need to manage expectations going into the finale here. What I find interesting in particular about WandaVision, and it's exactly what Casey said, which is, I don't actually necessarily blame the showrunners. I don't think the showrunners are the people entirely to blame for this. I think it's the marketing apparatus at Disney. The reason why this is released weekly as opposed to in a binge model is because it's designed to keep you subscribing to Disney Plus over 2 months instead of 1 month. And you'll notice, actually, if we're being really cynical, you'll notice that Falcon the Winter Soldier isn't starting next week. It's starting the week after. And that is because that means that its 8-episode run will carry you over past April into May. So you have to subscribe for 3 months to see it. That's 3 monthly subscriptions if you want to watch it weekly. And the show is designed in such a way to get you speculating, to keep you watching, and to get you engaged. And to, like, again, we're talking inside, we're almost as meta as WandaVision. We're talking about that structure while we're trapped inside it, to get us to do shows like this where we talk about it at length and we dissect it and we wonder what this means and what that means, because that drives engagement, that drives fear of missing out. And the fact that we're all doing this means that everybody watching this is less likely to wait 2 months, pay 1 month subscription and binge watch it at the end, and is more likely to pay across the 3 months and keep watching it week on week, because it could be spoiled for them, because it'll be ruined for them, because they don't necessarily have the week between each of those episodes in which to process and discuss it. No, that's a constant hype machine. It's fantastic for selling WandaVision, it's fantastic for selling Disney Plus. It's everything that Disney want from it as a corporation. It is not, I think, conducive to WandaVision being a satisfying story. That's my problem. Is that, like, all the stuff that Casey pointed out, and I think quite correctly, that undermines the narrative of WandaVision is also a feature that makes it extremely, extremely appealing as a product to launch the MCU on Disney Plus. And that those two aspects in competition with one another are fascinating to me, I think.
Yeah, no, we see this in video games all the time. It's not a bug; it's a feature. Which is at the heart of the problem here. Which is, you know, like we said, Monica Rambeau doesn't need to be in this. A sword doesn't need to be in this. You could cut out all of that and still have a very compelling narrative. But the larger brand is at stake. This is one cog in a much bigger machine.
So, I mean, is this what we are going to have to look forward to for all of our shows going forward? Like, none of them will be content with telling their own character stories. We're going to get shoehorned extra universal stuff kind of attached to it.
What I'm hoping here is that with Falcon Winter Soldier, and we'll go into this a little bit more next week when we talk about like our expectations for Falcon Winter Soldier, but I'm expecting a lot more straightforward buddy cop action. There might be some mysteries, but I don't think that's the crux of the show like it was WandaVision.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between Falcon Winter Soldier and this, in that Falcon Winter Soldier has, like, Bucky and it has Falcon. It has two characters from what is generally regarded by fans to be the crowning trilogy of the MCU, the Captain America movies. It has its own launching pad and it's continuing that on. I think WandaVision starting out of the gate is about, Wanda, who has been a secondary character in a bunch of movies, but never anchored a story herself. Vision, who's been in, a lot of movies dating back to Iron Man, but primarily as a voice inside a cell phone or inside a computer. It doesn't necessarily have the hook baked into it. So I suspect that a lot of the baggage that was piled onto this was a desperate, well, we have to make this matter. We have to make this something that fans are going to feel the, FOMO, the fear of missing out, the urge to consume it in order to keep pace. Whereas I hope, much like Jack, that with Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's like, no, we know that like the Steve and Bucky shippers are there no matter what we do. We know that the people who love the Winter Soldier and Civil War are going to tune in come hell or high water. It's like, so let's actually do the Ant-Man, the big, stupid, dumb buddy cop thing. And like, you watch the trailers and it's like, that's what they seem to be selling. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. Again, that thing where I mentioned that the Marvel projects that frustrate me are the ones that give the illusion of reaching for greatness without really trying. Whereas I'm quite happy with the ones that are like, yeah, this is fun. You're going to enjoy this. These are charismatic actors having fun together in big explosive set pieces. And, it's just going to be momentum. Plus, there's a guy with wings and a shield and a robot arm.
Guy with
and
a
their
metal
buddies.
arm. Yeah.
And
it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And you know what? Special points to WandaVision. I'm looking through all my notes, seeing what else I can add to this. Special points to WandaVision. For the majority of the episode, our hero of the story, Wanda, was fighting in her sweatpants.
Yes.
That's
I love that.
Yes.
I feel ya. I'm wearing some right now.
This is, again, very pandemic. And we're not going to call you on it. But I do like the pandemic. Like, it's very pandemic superheroing. It's like low effort. It's like, you're lucky I'm even wearing pants. It's like,
And I guess, like, overall, that's how I kind of want to end it. Overall, if I would have binged this, I think I would have been very happy with it. I think it tells a decent enough character story for Wanda dealing with some personal things. Yes, it doesn't really matter in the end, but that's comics. What you gonna do, baby? I enjoyed a lot of it. I enjoyed all of the beats, and I enjoyed the cleverness of the fights at the end.
would you say it was wonderful?
It was visionary.
Ooh, neither. I'd say I can't think of a pun for adequate.
Which one are you going to pick, Jack?
Here's what I'm saying. I wouldn't adequate it. Oh, no, that's terrible. How do you? What's a good pun for? What's a good pun for mediocre?
I hope that they leave everything in. I really do.
They got to leave everything in. It's it's above average, is what I'll say. The only guess we have to make is this question now about whether or not there will be a secret 10th episode based off of some possible leaks. Here's what I am gonna guess. I don't think we're going to get a secret 10th episode. I do think we are going to get a special look back episode with like interviews from all the cast members, including that. So I think maybe that's what we're going to get next week. Hey, if you liked WandaVision, here's a bunch of people talking about WandaVision who were part of making WandaVision. That's going to be our secret 10th episode.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, like, it does look like it was great fun. Like, again, going back to those early episodes where you're, like, recreating 60s sitcoms and sets and filming in front of a live audience, that sounds like it's kind of fun to unpack or explore. I mean, I'm all for, like, CGI is a great art form, but I feel like when you put a camera in, like, a CGI editing booth, there's really only so much you can capture of the magic of it. I feel like, no, we actually got people to come in and we got them to record and we did the takes, we did the laugh track, we had a little applause sign. I feel like, I could watch that.
Absolutely. And that's it for WandaVision. We will be back next week on A Marvelous Escape talking about the next Marvel show coming up, Falcon and Winter Soldier. Oh, so many people are going to get shipped. Also, don't start Googling shipping because, it'll lead you down a rabbit hole.
I mean, we're in the middle of the pandemic. What else are you doing, Jack?
Ooh.
I don't judge.
I'm just going like this. Now kiss.
Yeah, now make them kiss.
Now kiss.
Yeah.
Now kiss. That's what shipping is, by the way.
Yeah.
Now kiss. So, little for you. But thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for coming with us on this journey. Once again, I've been Jack Packard, here for The Escapist.
I've been Darren Mooney. I'm also here for The Escapist.
I've been KC Wosu, and yep, you guessed it. I'm also here for The Escapist.
Wow! What a
we got a
coincidence.
threefer.
Bye.